Stepping up to the couch, it's Brian, who led the league last season in cracked screens. But with his new athletic case, it looks like that won't be the case. Touchdown, Brian!
Basketball is one of the biggest sports in the world. Ever since basketball was created by Dr. James Naismith, his game would spark years and years of amazing competition, legendary stories, and the game would be an outlet for some of the best athletes the world has ever seen. Basketball is unlike any sport, where, although it is a team game, the superstar level players truly run the show. This heavy focus on the individual player has led to a huge debate, a debate about who the greatest player of all time is. Not who's the best player in the 80s or the 90s, no. Who is the greatest of all time? This documentary will not answer that question, however, it will lay out every player's career as it transpired and every player's case for GOAT.
Shot here. Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Bang! Iguodala coming back to Iguodala. Up for the layup. Blocked by James. LeBron James with the rejection.
Ford sends it to Kareem. Sky hook up and good. Lakers win.
Steal. Defended inbounds. Here it is again. Buckle up for Kobe. Kobe Bryant just shut the gravity out of the target center.
Look, needs one more hoop. He gets a pass, grabs it, and dunks it through. 100 points for Wilt Chamberlain.
Bird steals it. Johnson, layup, Boston. 1 second left. Duncan, a three-pointer. Puts it up. It's good. Tim Duncan from three-point land ties the game. 5 seconds to go. Scores with 2.
Down the lane. Followed by Russell. That was a big basket by Russell. Was right there to stuff it in.
Jordan. Open. Chicago with the lead.
There are 9 candidates for the greatest of all time. Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and LeBron James. We're going to go in chronological order here, so we will start with the 11-time champion, Bill Russell. Russell's story begins in high school. Despite his towering height, he didn't stand out much in his first 2 years of high school. Due to his lack of offensive skill, it was hard for his coaches to put him on the court. He saw so few minutes that he actually shared a jersey with a fellow bench warmer. But after developing his defensive game further to a point where it was elite, he would shine in his last 2 years of high school. But due to his race, he did not get recruited to top basketball colleges. So after graduating, Russell would travel with an exhibition team. And it was with that exhibition team that he was finally able to show off his defensive prowess. At one of the games, a scout for the University of San Francisco was in the stands. The scout saw potential in Russell, who was at that point 6'8" and very athletic, with a standing vertical that was 4 feet higher than the rim. So, Russell was offered a scholarship. In his sophomore year, Russell led his team to the NCAA championship, receiving the MVP, averaging 21.4 points and 21.5 rebounds. He would win the championship once again later in his career with the San Francisco Dons. Russell was taken second overall by the St. Louis Hawks in the 1956 draft, the 10th draft in NBA history. But being that it was 1956 and racial tensions were at an all-time high, the Hawks, who had an all-white team, traded Russell to the Boston Celtics, in exchange for the 7th pick, Ed McCully and Cliff Hagan, who would both become Hall of Fame players. Interestingly enough, the Rochester Royals were planning on taking Russell with the 1st overall pick. But the Celtics coach and general manager Red Auerbach convinced the Celtics owner Walter Brown to guarantee Rochester's owner Les Harrison a series of shows performed by the Ice Capades, a skating show that was at the peak of its popularity in the mid-50s. The Celtics owner was a part owner of this franchise, so he offered to give shows to Rochester, in exchange for the Royals passing on Bill Russell with the 1st pick. So the Royals passed on Bill Russell in exchange for a couple of skating shows, one of the weirdest trades in NBA history. The Royals took Cy Green, who would average 9.2 points for his career, and the Celtics would end up leaving this draft with 3 Hall of Famers. Tom Heinsohn, who was taken with the territorial pick, Casey Jones with the 13th pick, and of course Bill Russell. These 3 players would lay down the foundation for the Boston Celtics teams of the 50s and 60s. And it didn't take Bill Russell long to lead his team to the top. Russell spent up until December playing in the Olympics, so he would only play 48 games in his rookie season. But he would average 15 points and a league-high 19 rebounds. And he would lead the 56 Celtics to the NBA Finals, where they would face, ironically enough, the team that traded him, the St. Louis Hawks. Russell would average 13 points and 23 rebounds for the series, and he would put up 19 points and 32 rebounds in Game 7, leading the Celtics to a 2-point victory. It is no secret that the reason that many would consider Bill Russell the greatest of all time is the fact that he has more rings than he does fingers. After his rookie season, Russell would average 17 points and 23 rebounds a game, and he would win the MVP in just his 2nd season. The Boston Celtics would lose a close 6-game battle versus the St. Louis Hawks in the 1958 NBA Finals. Next season, Russell would again lead the Boston Celtics to the NBA championship, averaging a league-high 23 rebounds, as well as 17 points. In this final series, the Celtics would sweep the Minneapolis Lakers, with Russell averaging 29.5 rebounds per game. This championship would be preceded with 7 more consecutive championships. In 1960, Bill Russell and the Celtics would again defeat the team that traded him in the St. Louis Hawks, this time in 7 games. The Celtics would continue to win in 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, and 66, beating the Hawks in 5 games in 1961, the LA Lakers in 7 games, the Lakers again in 6 games, the San Francisco Warriors led by Wilt Chamberlain in 4 games, the Lakers in 5 games in 1965, and the Lakers in 7 in 66. Utter dominance throughout that 8-year span. Over those 7 years, Russell would win 4 MVPs, average 16 points, 24 rebounds during the regular season, and he'd average 18 points and 26 rebounds as well as almost 5 assists for the playoffs. And after losing to the Wilt Chamberlain-led Sixers in 1967, the Celtics would again win the championship in 1968 and again in 1969. That leaves Russell with a career total of 11 championships and 5 MVPs.
So Masquerade's coach of the Celtics, huh?
You know I was only kidding.
Kidding? Howard didn't think so. He asked me, were you really a friend of mine or just an actor?
Well, what'd you tell him?
I told him that you were an obscure actor.
Ooh, after all those calls I've dialed to Seattle.
Did you dial direct?
Of course. I'll bet Howard doesn't make half that many calls to his friends.
What friends? Good friends are for keeps, so keep in touch. Long distance is the next best thing to being there.
One of the unfortunate parts of playing in the early days of the NBA is a lot of the awards that exist today did not exist back then. For example, the 1969 season was the first season of All-NBA defensive teams, which was Russell's last season in the NBA, but he would still be selected to the All-NBA defensive first team. So it's safe to assume that Russell would have made all defensive first team every year of his career. Defensive Player of the Year also did not exist until 1982. So we can safely assume that Russell would have won at least 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, because Russell was regarded as the best defender in the league for pretty much his entire career. And finally, Finals MVP did not exist until 1969. Where the first Finals MVP was given to Jerry West despite losing to the Bill Russell Celtics. So we'll just assume that Russell would have won 7 out of the 11 possible Finals MVPs. That would leave Russell with a career tally of 11 championships, 5 MVPs, 7 Finals MVPs, 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 11 All-NBA First Team selections, 13 All-Defensive First Team selections, 11 All-Star appearances, and 4 rebounding titles. Numbers-wise, he has career averages of 15.1 points, 22.5 rebounds, 4.3 assists on 54% field goal percentage. Now once again, Russell's time period held him back in the numbers. The NBA did not record rebounds until 1973, 4 years after Bill's retirement. In his prime, it was speculated that Bill Russell averaged up to 8 blocks a game, with a career high of 17 blocks. Russell says that he averaged up to 15 a game in college. So let's just say that Russell averaged 6 blocks per game for his career. In 963 games, he would have tallied 4,815 career blocks. That is just short of 1,000 more blocks than Hakeem Olajuwon, who is first all-time. So that would make Russell first all-time in blocks, second all-time in rebounds, and 149th all-time in points. Russell's case for GOAT begins with him being the winningest player in not only basketball history, but sports history. 11 championships in 13 years. Pretty much being the best player on every team he was a part of up until his last 2 championships. He was also regarded as one of the best defenders of all time, one of the first bigs that could truly do it all on the defensive end. Because of his athleticism and speed, he could really guard anyone on the court, and he was potentially the greatest shot blocker of all time. Now, as for the criticism against Russell being the GOAT, he was not perfect. Though he was an 11-time champion, he notably had very good teammates. He played with 9 Hall of Famers all throughout his career, being on a team that had 5 Hall of Famers, including himself. It is also thought that Russell played in a weaker era of basketball, with less talent and less teams, which did lead to teams having a higher concentration of talent, but basketball was still relatively new and not that popular of a sport at the time. So top athletes were often choosing different sports to play, so the level of competition could not rival that of the 70s, 80s, and so on. And despite the Celtics' immense talent, they could have been a lot more dominant. They won multiple championships by a couple of points or a couple of lucky plays. They could have easily lost to the Lakers in a couple of finals. and when the Celtics finally had some comparable competition, the 1967 Sixers, they would lose in the conference finals. So while Russell did dominate his competition for nearly his entire career, he potentially did it against weak competition. Russell was also, despite his defensive dominance, a pretty mediocre offensive player. He never averaged more than 19 points per game, whereas every other candidate averaged 20 to 30 points per game a couple of times in their careers. With less production, you would expect higher efficiency, but Russell shot 44% for his career, which is the worst of the 9 candidates. So despite averaging the least amount of points per game of the 9 candidates, he also shot the worst percentage. Now when it comes to Bill Russell, you don't have to flip too many pages in the book of basketball to see the name Wilt Chamberlain. When the name Bill Russell is mentioned, the name Wilt Chamberlain doesn't fall far behind. And the contrast of these two players is really the contrast of what makes a great basketball player. Winning versus individual statistics, and Wilt Chamberlain no doubt had some absurd statistics. Wilt the Stilt began his basketball career in Overbrook High School, where unlike his counterpart in Russell, Wilt was immediately a standout athlete, starting on the varsity team for 3 years and scoring a total of 2,200 points in his high school career. And that came off of many big performances. Wilt scored 71, 74, and 90 points in 3 different games in his high school career. He averaged 44 points in his senior year, and in his 90-point performance, he scored 60 of those points in just 12 minutes. 1 quarter's worth of minutes, scored 60 points. Being nearly 7 feet tall in high school, Wilt was able to dominate his opponents inside for easy buckets. Wilt received the nickname The Stilt from a local writer covering high school athletics. All of his high school success led to him getting multiple scholarship offers from big schools. He eventually settled on Kansas. In Wilt's freshman season, he would average a staggering 30 points and 19 rebounds, and he would lead his team to the NCAA championship game where they would lose to UNC, but despite losing, he still won the Most Outstanding Player of the Tournament award. Wilt Chamberlain's second college season wasn't very fun for him. After being triple-teamed in the championship game, every team Kansas faced would adopt that same strategy. After his junior year, Wilt no longer wanted to play college ball, but at the time time, the NBA would not allow players to join the NBA until after their graduation class had been completed, so Wilt opted to play with the Harlem Globetrotters. After a year with the Globetrotters, Wilt would be drafted with a territorial pick to the Philadelphia Warriors in 1959, where he would receive the biggest contract in the NBA at the time in his rookie season, which at the time was only $30,000 a year. In Chamberlain's rookie debut, he would put up 44 points and 23 rebounds, and for the season, he would average 37 points and 27 rebounds. And he was named the NBA's MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season, the first of 2 players in NBA history to do that. But after losing to the Celtics in the divisional finals, Wilt actually considered retirement, due to the feeling that he was unfairly treated in comparison to other more human-sized players. He would return though, having his already massive salary by the standards of those times doubled to $60,000 a year. He would average 38 and 27 in his second season. That season, he would become the first player to ever score 3,000 points in a single season, but unfortunately Wilt's outstanding play did not contribute a lot to winning. In his second season, Philly would get swept by the Nationals, and in his third season, despite averaging 50 points, 26 rebounds, boasting his infamous 100-point game, and averaging more minutes than there are in a regulation basketball game, being the only player in NBA history to put up 4,000 points in a single season, the Warriors still lost in 6 games to the Boston Celtics. 50 points and 48.5 minutes still wasn't enough. The Philadelphia Warriors would be relocated to San Francisco, and then a few years into him being in San Francisco, after years of team disappointment despite individual success, Wilt would be traded back to Philadelphia to the newly added 76ers, that just replaced the Philadelphia Warriors. This roster was stacked. Future Hall of Famer Hal Greer, multiple-time All-Star Chet Walker, the team would beat the Oscar Robertson-led Cincinnati Royals, and of course face Bill Russell's Celtics. This would be the 4th time our 2 Goatmentary candidates would clash in the playoffs. The series would go to 7, with the final game being on the Celtics' home court. Both candidates would have amazing performances. Wilt would put up 32 and 30, and Russell would put up 16, 27, and 8. In the final minute of the game, Wilt would hit 2 free throws as well as get an open dunk on Russell, cutting the Celtics' lead to 1. Russell would throw an inbound pass off of the side of the backboard, which would give the Sixers possession. The Sixers, with a chance to win the game, would inbound the ball, and
Greer's putting the ball on a play. He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it. Over the stand throw. Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over. It's all over.
with the game within their grasp, the Sixers would lose, and Wilt would now be 0-4 against Russell in the playoffs. After that series, Wilt officially got the label of a loser. In the following season, Wilt would win MVP, and the Sixers would lose to the Celtics again in the playoffs. After this loss to the Celtics, many of Wilt's teammates were critical of him. Wilt would routinely skip practices, and was almost a separate entity from the team, which led to chemistry issues that didn't help against the Celtics. Sixers management also fired the head coach of the Sixers who let Wilt get away with this behavior, Dolph Schayes, in favor of Alex Hannum. Alex didn't let Wilt get away with this behavior and insisted that Wilt take a step back in his role as a scorer, opting for Wilt to be more of a playmaker, like his counterpart Bill Russell, take less shots and focus on defense. Wilt protested this many times to the point where it seemed like he would fight Coach Hannum, but Hannum, who is a 6'7", 209-pound former player, never backed down from the 7'1", 280-pound Wilt Chamberlain. This led to Wilt having immense respect for Hannum, so he gave in to his game plan. Wilt averaged a career low at the time, 21.1 points per game, but also averaged 24.2 rebounds and a career high at the time, 7.8 assists, and he shot a record-breaking 68% from the field. While his point production was far lower, his insane efficiency made this one of Wilt's most impressive seasons. And because of his success, winning his third MVP award, along with his teammates improving from the new style of play, the Sixers and Chamberlain finally defeated the Celtics. They would face Wilt's former team in the San Francisco Warriors in the finals. The Sixers would win in 6 games. Believe it or not, Wilt only averaged 17 points per game for the series, but he also contributed 28.5 rebounds per game and 6.8 assists. Next year, the Sixers would run the same game plan. Wilt would be the only center in NBA history to lead the league in total assists, averaging 8.6 a game and totaling 702. Because of this, Wilt would win his 4th and final MVP award, but unfortunately in their matchup versus the Celtics, the Sixers were struggling with injuries. The Sixers still managed to go up 3-1, but would become the first team in NBA history to blow a 3-1 lead. Wilt went back to his selfish ways and complained about his touches. This led to further turmoil with the team, and this, along with personal reasons, led to Coach Hannum resigning. Then Wilt would be traded to the Lakers. Wilt had asked for this trade, but the reason for it has been heavily disputed. A disagreement with ownership over a legal dispute, unlisted personal reasons, Wilt feeling like he's grown out of Philly, even him wanting an opportunity to date white women was listed because that wasn't accepted in Philly but was in LA. Whatever the reason, Wilt was traded to the Lakers for Darrell Imhoff, Jerry Chambers, and Archie Clark. Wilt was joining a team that featured Hall of Famers Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, along with a plethora of talented role players. Wilt's start in LA wasn't without drama. He had turmoil with the Lakers owners and the head coach, who he felt catered the offense too much to West and Baylor and not enough to him. The Lakers still made the finals despite Wilt's struggles to fit in. Wilt would once again have to match up with his rival Bill Russell. Wilt would struggle mightily in this series, only averaging 11.7 points per game on 50% shooting. Late in Game 7, after Wilt had led a comeback, he would twist his knee badly on a rebound.
Joined us Sam Jones, fouled out of the ball game. Here's Havlicek. Rebound coming off, and Chamberlain gets it. 5:55 to go, and Chamberlain hurt his leg on the play. Baylor. Russell with the rebound. 103 to 94. Chamberlain can't move, Chris. He's down there holding that knee. He really twisted that knee on that last rebound. But he did get the rebound and quickly calls for a timeout.
20 seconds, officials timeout. He'd have to sit out for the rest of the game, and the Celtics would win Game 7 by 2 points. A brutal loss for Wilt and the Lakers. Him sitting was controversial because many didn't see the injury as severe enough to sit him for the last few minutes, which led the Lakers management to fire the head coach. Wilt would go down with an injury in the 1969-70 season after a good start with the new head coach of the Lakers, Joe Mulaney. He wouldn't play again until the last 3 games of the season. The Lakers still made the finals to face the New York Knicks, led by Willis Reed and Walt Frazier. The series would be tied 3-3 with Willis Reed going down with a severe injury in Game 6. The Lakers seemed to be guaranteed to win with Willis out. But in one of the most inspiring moments in NBA history, late in Game 7, Willis would play. Hobbling onto the court, he only scored 4 points, but played 27 minutes despite being severely injured. This inspired his teammates to beat the Lakers by 14. 2 years in a row, the Lakers choked away the series. Next season, the Lakers would bring back Gail Goodrich in free agency. They would face the Bucks in the playoffs, but with Elgin Baylor gone with an Achilles tear and Jerry West out with a knee injury, the Lakers would lose to the Milwaukee Bucks, led by league MVP Lou Alcindor, or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as we know him now. The Lakers would hire former Celtics guard Bill Sharman, who had played with Bill Russell. He would insist that Wilt focus on defense and being a good teammate and less on scoring, similar to what happened with Alex Hannum, learning the same lesson twice. With this mindset, the Lakers, after matching up with Kareem again, would win, with Wilt matching the 11-year younger superstar play after play. The Lakers would once again face the Knicks in the finals, and they would beat them 4-1, with Wilt winning Finals MVP, averaging 19 and 23. In the final year of his career, Wilt went out averaging 13 and 18 and beat his own record for field goal percentage, shooting 72.7% for the season. But in the last finals of his career, the Lakers would lose 4-1 to the Knicks. Wilt would sign with an ABA team to be a player coach, but be sued by the Lakers because he was still under contract with them. He would be forced to be just a coach, and after a year with the San Diego Conquistadors, he retired.
When 7-foot 1-inch Wilt Chamberlain tried to get in a Volkswagen, people said it couldn't be done.
Oh, man.
It couldn't. Of course, there's plenty of room for Bill Cunningham, but then he's only 6'6".
Just like Bill Russell, some of Wilt's stats were limited by the era that he played in. No all-defensive teams until later in his career, blocks weren't recorded, there was no Finals MVP award in the first championship of his career, and while there was no Defensive Player of the Year award, I don't think that Wilt would have won as many as Russell, which, as we previously speculated, to be 4 for Bill. We will say that Wilt wins 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, and as for the blocks, it's been speculated that Wilt and Russell averaged roughly the same amount of blocks, which was 6 a game for his career. So just like Russell, we will multiply the amount of games that Wilt played times 6 blocks, which would put Wilt first all-time on the all-time blocks list with an unbelievable 6,270 career blocks. He would also have a lot more all-defensive selections because the award only came into existence in 1971. Because there's only one spot on the first team for a center, we will give Wilt second team honors because we gave Russell first team, because for the most part he's considered a better defender. This would give Wilt 10 all-defensive second team selections along with 2 more first teams he would have gotten after Russell's retirement. Wilt's case for GOAT no doubt lies in his numbers. He has the fewest amount of championships of the 9 candidates, but without a doubt the most impressive individual statistics. Wilt is 6th all-time in scoring, one of 7 players in the 30K points club. He's 1st all-time in rebounds, with a 2,300 rebound lead on Bill Russell. Wilt's dominance on the offensive end led to him putting up the highest scoring performance in NBA history with 100 points versus the New York Knicks in 1962. He also has 6 of the top 10 scoring performances in NBA history, and he scored 60 plus points 32 times in his career. Offensively, Wilt was arguably the most unstoppable force the league has ever seen, on top of his dominance on the glass and the shot blocking that would have put him #1 all time. He won 4 MVPs in his career, won Finals MVP once, led the league in scoring 7 times, rebounds 11 times, assists once. He was the only center to ever lead the league in assists. He was All-NBA First Team 7 times, All-NBA Second Team 3 times, All-Defensive First Team 4 times, and All-Defensive Second Team 10 times. His dominance, along with his ridiculous scoring outputs, is the main reason many would call him the GOAT. But the dominance came as a double-edged sword. While his scoring made him individually great, the only time Wilt ever won in his career was when he sacrificed his offensive game. In 1967 and 1972, Wilt won by reducing his role offensively, so Wilt's dominance could be seen as a detriment to his teams. So while Wilt was great individually, his numbers don't seem to correlate with winning, at least at the highest level. Wilt won 2 rings, but lost in the finals 4 times, and lost to Bill Russell in the conference finals multiple times. Wilt, at his peak performance, numbers-wise, was a loser. Only when he wasn't dominating the ball and scoring the most that he could, did he win. And he doesn't get the excuse of no help. He played with many Hall of Fame level players like Hal Greer, Billy Cunningham, Paul Arzon, Nate Thurmond, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West. It wasn't as much help as Bill Russell, but he certainly wasn't stuck with scrubs. So in summary, his talent was unbelievable, but he struggled to win on the biggest stage with that talent. When the league was looking for a new star as the Wilt and Russell era came to a close, a new player emerged as the next superstar of the NBA. That player was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. There is no word that can properly sum up Lew Alcindor's high school career better than the word dominance. Lew was 6'8" and dunking the ball at the age of 13, so naturally in high school he dominated. He led Power Memorial Academy to 3 straight New York City Catholic championships, a 71-game winning streak, and a 79-2 record overall. Power would also win the National High School Championship in Lew Alcindor's junior season. Alcindor would play college ball at UCLA. After playing on the freshman team in Lew's varsity debut, he would drop 56 points, a UCLA record, making a statement early for how dominant he would be. He would win Player of the Year twice, he was a 3-time first-team All-American, won 3 championships, winning Most Outstanding Player in the NCAA for all 3 tournaments, and he would be the first Naismith College Player of the Year in 1969. He was so dominant in college that he would be the reason for dunking being banned after the '67 season, a ban that would continue for a decade. The Milwaukee Bucks would win a coin toss with the Phoenix Suns for the first overall pick and draft Alcindor. In his rookie year, Lew would average 29 and 14, being second in the league in scoring behind Jerry West and his 31.2 points per game. The Bucks would also improve by 29 wins. He would obviously win Rookie of the Year, and he'd lead the Bucks to the second round of the playoffs, with playoff averages of 35 and 17 on 57% shooting. In the offseason, the Bucks would acquire Oscar Robertson in exchange for Flynn Robinson, who had just made his first All-Star appearance, and Charlie Polk. This addition would be pivotal in the Bucks becoming a powerhouse, winning 66 games, going on a record at the time 20-game winning streak. Alcindor would win his first MVP award with season averages of 32 points, which was the best in the league, as well as 16 rebounds. The Bucks would go 12-2 in the playoffs, including a sweep in the finals, and Lew would of course be the finals MVP, having averaged 27 and 19 on 60% shooting. And after winning the 71 championship, Lew would have his name changed to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Kareem would win his second MVP, averaging his career best 35, 17, and 5 on 57% shooting. Absurd stats, but this would be the start of a trend in Milwaukee. Kareem would play phenomenally, but the Bucks wouldn't see much success, losing in the Western Conference Finals because back then the Bucks were a Western Conference team. In '73, Kareem would put up 30, 16, and 5, but they'd lose to the Warriors in the first round, and then he'd lose to the Boston Celtics in a crushing 7-game series in 1974, after winning his third MVP. And in the 74-75 season, with Kareem missing nearly 20 games and Oscar Robertson retiring, the Bucks didn't even make the playoffs. Because of this lack of team success, as well as him feeling that Milwaukee didn't fit his cultural needs, with him being raised in New York, he wanted to play in a big city, so he asked to be traded to the Knicks or the Lakers. He would get his wish heading to the Lakers for Elmore Smith, who was a double-double center, Brian Winters, who would go on to be a 2-time All-Star with Milwaukee, Dave Myers, and Junior Bridgman, who would average 14 points per game for his 9 seasons with Milwaukee. His career with LA would get off to a great individual start. Kareem averaged 28 points, a league-best 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4.1 blocks a game. He would win his 4th MVP, however, because of old divisional rules, despite having the 4th best record in the West, they would miss the playoffs. He would win his 5th MVP in the following season. The Lakers would face the Portland Trail Blazers in the conference finals. Kareem would battle Bill Walton down low, and Kareem definitely won the individual battle, but Walton had significantly better help, and the Lakers would lose in a sweep. For the next 2 years, the Lakers would lose to the Sonics twice in the playoffs, but in 1979, the Lakers would get the first overall pick and use it to draft Magic Earvin Johnson. Kareem finally had some help in LA. Kareem would average 25, 11, and 3.5 blocks on a career best 60% shooting. That high efficiency could be attributed to him having a point guard who knew how to set him up. This performance, along with the Lakers winning 60 games, led to Kareem winning his record-breaking 6th MVP. The addition of Magic wasn't the only improvement to the team. Norm Nixon averaged 17 and 9, Jamal Wilkes averaged 20 points per game, and Michael Cooper developed further as a defender. The Lakers would make the NBA Finals. Kareem would average 33, 14, and 4.5 blocks versus the Sixers, but the Finals MVP would go to Magic Johnson, who after Kareem went down in Game 5, would close out the series in Game 6 with 42, 15, and 7. And from this point on, Kareem would average 27 and 2 for the remainder of his career. The Lakers would win the '85 Finals. Kareem averaged 26, 9, 29-5 in that series. In Game 5, Kareem would score 36 points to go up 3-2, and he'd score 29 in Game 6, which would lead to him winning his second Finals MVP. In 1987, the Lakers would beat the Celtics in 6 games. Magic would win Finals MVP. In 1988, the Lakers would beat the Detroit Pistons in 7 games, and James Worthy would win Finals MVP. Kareem, at 40 years old, only averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds, and in 1989, Kareem would play out his final season at the age of 41, averaging 10, 3, and 1, and he would play his final game in Game 4 of the '89 Finals, a series in which the Lakers would lose in a sweep. Kareem put up 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 blocks on 2 for 8 shooting.
In basketball, is it better to be bigger or smaller?
Bigger. Like us.
Right, like us. Up top. Yeah.
Kareem might have the most stacked resume of any player in NBA history. He is a 6-time champion, 6-time MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, 10-time All-NBA First Team player, Second Team 5 times, All-Defensive First Team 5 times, and Second Team 6 times. He won Rookie of the Year and was a 19-time All-Star. He is first all-time in scoring, he's third in rebounds, and for blocks, in Kareem's first 4 seasons, the league did not record blocks. Had he averaged 3.5 blocks over those years, that would be an additional 1,123 blocks, which would give him 4,312 career blocks, which would place him first all-time, but third when you add in Russell and Wilt's hypothetical block numbers. Kareem's biggest case for GOAT has to be the fact that his name is just scattered everywhere. Being first all-time in scoring, top 3 in rebounds, top 3 in blocks, he owns the record for MVPs and is tied for second most rings of any of the 9 candidates. Kareem was the best player in the league for a decade, and his numbers more than prove that. But many would argue that these achievements, especially his place on all-time lists, has a lot to do with his ridiculous longevity. Kareem only averaged 24.6 points for his career. That's nothing crazy. Damian Lillard and Russell Westbrook averaged just 1 less point per game for their careers, and they certainly aren't on the level of a top scorer of all time. Kareem played for the second most games in NBA history, second to Robert Parrish, who only played 51 more games, and he's first in minutes by almost 3,000 minutes. Had Kareem retired at a normal age, let's say 36, he would have retired with 31,527 points, which is certainly impressive, but would move him from first to 6th all-time in scoring, as well as move him down from 3rd to 7th in rebounds. However, the counterpoint to that would be, it is very impressive for a player in the 80s, where sports medicine clearly wasn't at its peak, to play as much as Kareem did. Maybe he wasn't scoring 40 every night, but being able to play as long as he did is no doubt impressive, and could potentially be seen as an example of why he is potentially the greatest. So Kareem's numbers are all over all-time lists. He won a record-breaking 6 MVPs, but those numbers have a lot to do with Kareem playing an absurd amount of time.